for those coaches that want to do an international internship, like say if we take UW as an example, just make sure you feel mature enough and
Mm,
confident enough to kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable. It was me operating the business and clients. I've never worked in a team setting like that, so I thought, no, well, best way to do it is to go over to a place where it's renowned for its sport availability and is Division 1 sports all over the place. And whilst that is the case here, if you're not doing soccer or football, um,
yeah,
it's it's not worthwhile really in the UK. More efficient with my space. Like, let's move that because that's not in use anymore and it's a
yeah,
trip hazard, or let's move that plate because it's not in use anymore and someone could trip on it. Um, so that was kind of one thing that kind of
yeah.
helped me, was just having a tick sheet.
Hello and welcome back. So today's episode is with Jack Woolhouse. He is a coach from England that I met prior to him going over to America and coaching there, and we've sort of just built this relationship up. So hello, Jack. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So give us a little bit of an introduction on yourself and how you got to become a strength and conditioning coach.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, wind it way back when I was 16, 17, choosing a college course. I really didn't have much of an idea of what I wanted to do, to be honest. Um, so I did my level 2, level 3 personal training at college, which was a vocational course. And a level 3 personal trainer is all you need for training in commercial settings. So I kind of fell straight from college straight into personal training, just training general pop um, clients, weight loss, that sort of thing. And then as that career kind of started to get a little bit stale, I started to kind of find a craving for something a little bit more in depth, a little bit more focused. And I met a trainer in one of the gyms I worked at, and he introduced me to a guy in Harborne, which is a local town to where I lived, who ran a sports therapy diploma. And we had a few chats. Um, did his level 5 sports therapy diploma, and then whilst I was doing that, kind of got the opportunity to work within that clinic setting. Um, so I kind of developed into a hybrid between making the links between the exercise knowledge that I had from my personal training and then combining it with the recent sports therapy knowledge to kind of become this hybrid coach for injuries. Um, Never really gelled too much with all hands on, and never really
Mm,
gelled too much with all gym work. So kind of started to see people and doing, I kind of clicked with the treatment styles that allowed me to do it on the gym floor. So typically incorporated movement. Um, and then again, another kind of connection with that clinic director is he works at a university college, Birmingham, which is my local university. And at one point, I think they had a performance conference. It's called the Spark Conference. So it's the Sports
mm,
Performance and Rehabilitation Conference. And we got free tickets. So I went along to go see some of the speakers. I don't really remember many of the speakers because it was quite a while ago. And there were only short little snippets. But what it did do was allowed us to go and tour the university's new renovated high performance center. And I was like blown away. I was like, wow, this is only down the road, and it's a perfect opportunity for me to kind of take that step into a higher education. Because as I was developing, I was kind of experiencing that there is a bit of hierarchy of education status. Um, without a degree, I felt limited and felt like I wasn't really taken seriously. I was always seen as just a level 3 personal trainer with a sports therapy kind of qualification. The So that ability to go into higher education and also at a facility which was like super high standard, the facilities was kind of a no-brainer. So that then developed me into my strength and conditioning degree, which I just graduated from on Wednesday, and then onto a master's next week. So it's not
all true.
not really, yeah, it's not really stopped since the degree started really. But whilst doing that, also still maintaining my online and face-to-face personal training and coaching business in 2 locations. So recently stepped my foot back into a commercial gym setting because one's opened up 5 minutes away from me, so it's opened up to be able to kind of expand my business into multiple locations, which is good without the stress of having to commute very far. So it's broadened the clientele, at least where the
Yeah.
locations are.
What's it? Obviously, most strength coaches will know
hmm
from experience, but new coaches that want to get into the industry,
hmm
they might not know that obviously we have to work and sort of study at the same time. So it's not like you work or you study. You kind of
hmm
have to. How have you managed to find a good balance between both?
Um, Making mistakes with it, I guess, kind of feeling burnt out through weeks of kind of not having it correct and not having the right systems in place. So before my degree, I'd never invested much money into like organization systems, and
Mm.
it was all through me. So clients would contact me, they'd book in. I just use Google Calendar. Whereas through first year, you can kind of get away with it because it's kind of just attend and submit stuff, and you probably will pass. But the development into year 2 and year 3, where it starts to get a little bit more intense, time management just became the one big factor. So it kind of forced my hand into looking at smart investments I can make for the business and for university, such as like calendar systems, booking systems, and payment management systems. So I could automate as much as I possibly can without taking away, some physical interaction, because I think that's important and something that's people value within personal training is they can still talk to a person rather than
Yeah,
have to
I
go onto
think
someone's
that
link, book in, and all
the biggest thing with coaching as well is like obviously you've had general population type work,
that.
so that connection with the person is one of the biggest things that any coach should look at first of all. But when you're sort of
hmm
working for yourself and having to coach people that aren't there all the time, they're actually
hmm
physically going out to get it. I think that
hmm
makes it really important to sort of have all these systems in place so that you're ready to go. What are some of the systems that you do use?
So the main one that I use and stuck with now is a calendar company called Motion. It's an AI calendar system which has a booking link process as well. So you can set up your own schedules. So I've set up a uni schedule, set up a JD gym schedule. I've set up a MT clinic schedule, which is the clinic I'm at. And then what that's allowed me to do is kind of have a few links on my WhatsApp description on my business WhatsApp, and clients can click it, access the calendar they want, make a booking, reschedule the booking. And I've had it so it can automate respond emails. So if they've never booked before, if I've set the AI that name is a recurring booking, then it won't do
Mm-hmm.
this. But if it's someone booking for the very first time and a name it doesn't recognize, it will automatically send them the appropriate payment link that they need, which I just use PayPal because it has that integration process really nicely. Um, and then more recently with the programming, I use an app, Train Heroic, which when I was over at UW, they mentioned that they used to use. So they used to use
Mm-hmm.
Train Heroic before they started using Team Builder.
Team builder.
Um, so and not many, not like I don't know how I got because there's so many like PT coaching management systems now. There's really only kind of like a few that are like gold standard, I guess, and seen
Mm.
across like multiple different massive division sports and whatnot. So I'm not sure how I originally decided Train Heroic was the one that I was going to use. I think I got a coach for myself and they used it and I liked it. So I was like, oh, I'm going to look into this for my own work. Because before that, I was just using Excel and Google
Yeah.
Sheets and stuff. And again, it's fine, it's functional, it works, and it's built up my skills using those, using Excel and Google Sheets. But at the same time, it's very time consuming. So it's
Yeah.
Train Heroic just makes it
100%.
super easy. You just build your exercise library, go and get a camera, film them, upload it to YouTube, and then you've got yourself a nice, easy way of just kind of like building programs, which is just super time efficient, which is obviously key. It's the heart of everything when you're running a degree and a business at the same time.
So obviously, I know because I went through the same program, but sort of take us through how you applied for the University of Washington and how it is that everything played out.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't select University of Washington, so we got a presentation. Well, I wasn't even a presentation. We just got a couple slides sent to our university. So at the start of my third year, our course lead in one of our kind of tutorial lectures, which is just like a informative lecture on multiple different things. At the start of third year, we got a presentation that there was this international internship program with the IUSCA, and they just described that, there is a cost to it. Here's the sign up process. And I think the two program cards they gave us was UCLA and
DC?
I forget where the other university was. Possibly Washington, DC. Yeah, can't remember. But either way, it was just kind of like, once I kind of had some interest in that's where I want to do over the summer, because before then I was all just me, and it was me operating the business and clients. I've never worked in a team setting like that, so I thought, best way to do it is to go over to a place where it's renowned for its sport availability, and there's Division 1 sports all over the place. And whilst that is the case here, if you're not doing soccer or football, it's it's not worthwhile really in the UK. So I thought there's an opportunity there to go over and expose myself to a new industry that I've never really been part of, never really not necessarily had the opportunity, but never sought out the experience to go and do that in the UK. And then I spoke to Andrew at the IUSCA, had the interview process, and then I think we were quite late to it. So like 2 weeks later, he sent me an offer for UW's program. And that's how it came about. I just looked at the program, looked at Coach McKeefery and the head coach, and looked at the staff and looked at the location, and then I think 2 days later I just said, yeah, that's good with me. I'm happy to go there. And then upon looking at like where it was location wise, state of Washington, I was like, that's my kind of state anyway. Lakes, hikes, outdoor activities everywhere. So I was like, yeah, I mean, sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah. So what is it that sort of made you reach out to me and ask, obviously, about my experience there?
Yeah. So I had once I accepted my offer with the IUSCA, and I think I made the first deposit. The Andrew, who I mentioned earlier, he set up a coaching call, or just like an introduction call to Coach McKeefery, and we just had obviously it was late for us. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night with the time difference, but we just had like a 45-minute call, which at the time, knowing how like busy and how much work that Coach McKeefery has, I never really appreciated that 45 minutes as much as I do now. We're looking back, that he gave us a good talk and talked about the program, just talked about how he likes to kind of see interns as an integral part of his program. He mentioned that the previous coaches, because obviously this was year 2. Well, I was there for the second year of his time as a head coach there. He talks about his first year and the interns that came through, and one of the interns' names he mentioned was yours. He just said Coach Manny, and originally the name kind of didn't ring a bell, or it didn't kind of like seek you out, if that makes sense. But I remember it was at the time where they had the Alamo Bowl, and they won, and then you posted. I think you must have posted a congratulations, and I saw him maybe repost your post, and I thought, oh, Coach Manny, I recognize that name. That's the coach that was there before. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to reach out and get as much information about the program, so I can kind of optimize my time there. So I spoke to you. I think we had a call before I went out, um, and he talks about how good you were, how good of an example you were, um, and how like we were following in those footsteps of the expectations were set high. So no better way of kind of knowing what the program or what the expectations are about, than actually speaking to someone that's done it already, rather than going in completely blind.
Yeah,
So that's how kind of we came
I've
about.
I've sort of mentioned this. I don't think I've mentioned it in the podcast, but our call was supposed to be like a half-hour call because I think we were both busy that day. But it turned
Oh
out to
yeah,
be like a 2 hour and a half call.
oh yeah.
Just
I was wandering around. I think I was at work at the time, and
you
I was
were
just
work,
wandering
yeah.
around the staff room. So there's people coming in and out constantly, but because I didn't think I'd need to be like sat down in a quiet space, so I thought it was just gonna be a quick call. But yeah, we spoke for a lot, and I think we talked about the program, but we also talked about a lot of philosophies and
Hmm.
beliefs that we have, and we shared a lot
Of the
of
same
beliefs
beliefs.
and common ground, right? So we ended up talking about a few different things rather than just the program, which was nice.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I liked about that call is we actually sat down and just spoke shop. We just went through the
Mm,
industry and what we felt, what our space and what we want to achieve in that space means to
mm,
us. And I
yeah.
think with that right mentality, like what do you think is some things that coaches that want to coach internationally should keep in mind
Mm.
before going out?
Just kind of make sure you're ready for that kind of level. I mean, I've only done UWs, but I mean, we talked about other internship programs with other interns and the intensity that some of the other internships are, and then also some of the lack of intensity some
Mm,
internships have. Sometimes you're just like not really integrated that much at all with the flow of the program. Whereas if we take UWs as an example, we were like from day one, something that Coach McKeefe said, it's going to be like taking a drink through a fire hose on day one, because you're going to be meeting all of the team. You're going to be coaching like the guys on your rack immediately, and we're going to be firing out instructions that you're not really going to know what they
mm,
are. So just make sure that you're kind of switched on, make sure you're aware of your surroundings. So it was quite intense from like the word go. Fortunately, I managed. So if it, a little bit off topic, but we got given some dates that were kind of slightly off from. It was kind of wider than what the actual program was. So I was out
right.
like 2 weeks early. So I thought we were starting on a date, but that date was apparently not the actual official start date. It was like 5 days later than that. But I actually decided to go out earlier than the original date, just so I could kind of get over the jet lag and get my bearings. So I'd been like in Seattle for like a week by that point, and I spoke to Coach Cook, who was our internship coordinator, and again, at the time, didn't really know much about the program, but he offered to give me and a few of the other interns that were out earlier a tour around, like before we started. So we actually got a good, like, little bit of a kind of
Hmm.
introduction to the location. The kind of some of the players were knocking around, but it was like they were in a break at the time, so there wasn't many. But it kind of allowed us to kind of get a little bit used to the bearings. But for those coaches that want to do an international internship, like say if we take UW as an example, just make sure you feel mature enough in your and
Mm,
confident enough to kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because I consider myself quite a confident coach now, and I kind of search. So rather than just feeling uncomfortable frequently, I have to search generally for like
hmm.
you know, either maybe some reading that is against my bias, or I have to maybe go into like a space, like a commercial gym that's surrounded by coaches that I don't see, or I see a lot of issues with the way they operate. And that's uncomfortable. I have to kind of like be in those environments,
Hmm.
um, and like UW, for example, being in that space. I've never been in a team setting before. Like for someone that's been coaching quite a long time, it's quite an intimidating and quite a hectic environment to be in. So yeah, just making sure that individuals, especially if you're a student, you know, making sure you feel ready to kind of apply some of your learnings, and you're confident to have conversations, and your confidence to just be be a presence, which you could argue is just a people skill. Just feel like you've developed your feel like you've developed your communication skills enough to the point where you feel able to be in a room with some hugely respected coaches, like across internationally, and talk shop with them, so you can make the most and ask them valuable questions and make the most of your time, because otherwise you're kind of like just repeating orders, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like, again, it works well because the players then still see you as a valuable member of the team, but you've kind of got to be selfish. You've paid money to be there,
100%.
especially if you're international. It's a lot of money. You have to be getting some integral kind of information that's going to either increase your knowledge or improve your value, how valuable you are to people. So you've got to feel like you're going to be getting something from it, and it kind of feel like people self-limit themselves if they're not confident enough to have those conversations, and feel kind of like they have to they're kind of what's that,
just have to
imposter
take
syndrome,
a back
I
seat.
guess. Yeah, right. Like it's good to just get involved and ask the questions, and
100%. I think when I was
use the equipment.
Yeah, that's a big one as well. So when I was there, we had a coach. It was Coach Tony. And like after every session, without a doubt, I would like reach out to one of the coaches and just bombard them with questions about the session, about like why we did a certain exercise, why we did a certain type of warm up. And it got to the point where I think Coach Tony just came up to me and was like, "What's your question today?" And I was kind of taken aback because like obviously I had a question, but I was like, is it that predominant that I ask questions every single day? But like 100% asking questions and using all the equipments and figuring out different ways to use every piece of equipment is like the foundation of how to develop as that strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
Something that you said was quite interesting is making sure that you're feeling uncomfortable. I think it's quite, especially in this industry, it's quite easy to just go into a gym and just be there and just play your role in that gym. But like, how are you going to make yourself stand out? How are you going to get them to be like, oh yeah, Manny does this, or Jack's really good at this. So I think like when I went across there, speaking of mentalities, I went in with the I've got 5 or 6 weeks, however long the program ran for, to make them remember who I am. And I think for me, it was just like every day was a new chance to prove myself. Every day was a new way to be like, how will I make them remember this that I did? Like, you went out early. I was going to go out on the night before it started, but because of plane delays and all that stuff, I ended up being a day late to the program. So the first meeting that we had as a team, Coach Mac was like, Manny, you weren't here yesterday. Introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about yourself and what you want to achieve with the program. And I was like, my name's Manny. I rattled off my elevator pitch. And at the end, I was like, honestly, my goal here is to make your lives easier. And like Coach Mac has his exit interviews, and like that's one of the things that he said. He was like, you made it so that I could spend longer in my office and do the little tasks that I had to. And I was like, to me, it kind of made me feel like he valued me for making sure that everything was done in time for him to be able to do whatever else that he needed to. So how was your exit interview?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, mine was I was still, being like an international intern as well, right? So, like, you know, like you would have, like Coach McKeefe would have said, like, if you've played football as a, you know what it's like to step into a stadium where people hate you, right? And like, what that kind of, the stakes are high, that kind of thing. So when I was having my exit interview, I kind of like, I knew I would, I wasn't going in kind of expecting, oh, I kind of want to work at, in college football, anywhere in the nation. So then it's not on his radar, right? To like be like, there's a place here, right? You could apply for it, right? So I think my kind of plan, and something that I'm sure he would have spoke to you about, is about being like an entrepreneur, right? So having your own operations business, and he's wrote books and all sorts. So
Books.
my kind of idea is, where I kind of wanted to be is, I'm comfortable within that, running my own business. So just developing on those key entrepreneurial skills. So we talked a lot around like the future of personal training, and how to maybe stand out and develop, and directions to go in, and other revenue streams that can be created, such as podcasts, books, speakers. And we talked a lot around having some form of international partnership with other interns, where we bring we bring international speakers over, and then we take we host them, and then vice versa, we send international speakers over, and the partner intern, or the partner partner in the business would again host them, and then we'd kind of make that connection, bridge that gap. So yeah, we talked a lot around that, and we talked about the intensity, and just how it was an overall incredible program to be a part of.
Yeah, 100%.
With the network development and all that sort of stuff, it was awesome. I mean, we had so many just little guest visits here and there of just people that were just kind of popping in to see Coach Matt, and we'd have the opportunity to kind of just listen to them for like 5 or 20 minutes, or some of them ran little workshops. And these weren't planned. These weren't things that were on the curriculum, for us to do. But that opportunity arose, and then, he talks about networking, and how it's just so important to maintain that strong network. And it showed. It showed whilst we were there.
We're back. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but now we're back. We were just talking about sort of the differences between sort of the private sector, public sector of S&C to then being in a collegiate type setting. What are some of the differences that you found?
The volume of moving parts. There's just so many moving parts to take into consideration when you're working in a private space with 1 or 2 people. You've got way less logistics to think about. You can kind of set up what you want. You can pre-plan the exercises that you want. And of course, these, at the college level, they're following a program, right? So everyone's kind of routine. But you've still got 5 people on your station that you've got to take through a workout, with 50 other guys that are in the gym. And that, there's certain equipment that they haven't got, the full 50. So you've got to rotate and make sure you're observant of what other people are doing, to make sure your guys don't lose that flow and the workout runs nicely, while still getting it done within a time frame, because often they're on a pretty tight schedule, right? So there's just a lot of more volume of moving parts, making sure there's not equipment around that they can trip on and that's just useless. Get it out of the way, making sure you're observant of like maybe the station next to you. Because again, my goal is to, I kind of said to people before I went out, my goal was to be a useful sponge. So I wanted to sponge up as much information as possible, but I also wanted to be useful. So making sure that the rack next to me was also, if there was something there that hadn't been sorted, then it'd make their life easier if I'd noticed it, not to leave it, just to go and help out. So again, making sure that the area around me was as best as possible managed, while still maintaining all of those moving parts, and making sure that my guys weren't going through a different session or a different flow to everyone else because I'd been not concentrating and focused on something else. So it's kind of
Yeah,
having your, fingers in lots of different pies at once, um, while still maintaining this rhythm that the rooms kind of rotating through. Um,
and that's the biggest thing with anyways like UW is that everyone it was like organized chaos, but it was all circuits. So everyone had like
mhm,
a right direction of going. Um,
mhm,
what was like the easiest way that you found of managing? So you would have had four people each rack. You'd have had two
mhm,
racks, and then everything else that came with the internship. How did you sort of go
mhm.
around and manage everything that you had to take care of?
So I think during the lifting sessions, the easiest thing for me was that I just took where I made sure I had a printout of the session. Um, of course, it was up on the screens as well, so it was mainly for my kind of visual organization. And then I'd write before the lift, I'd write everyone's kind of first initials. I mean, obviously, you're with the same guys quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'd like, if the name is Kieran, I'd write K or C, if, depending on how it's spelled. So I knew that then that person, all the way through the lift, I'd write K underneath each exercise, and I made sure that the rack then the player's job was to do the lift, but then also once they'd finished their sets and reps, come and tell me that you've done it so I can cross you off and I can assign you something else that's so either
Mm-hmm.
someone's not started yet, um, something that is free and available, maybe something off the back end. So I don't know if you've talked about this in other podcasts, but generally it's like it's a tier system. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that must have been the same, right? So there's like 4 or 5 circuits. There's tier A, up to tier E. So one thing that Coach McKeefe said in one of our like pre-day meetings, when we gather up in the morning, was he talks about start chipping away at the back end of the lift. So kind of you've got the
Mm-hmm.
start and the end, and then it's just getting closer and closer. So just having like a sheet where I tick things off, just having like a list, something that was scruffy and that was mine. I didn't have to worry about other people understanding it so long as I understood it. And I
Yeah.
just tick and cross. And once everyone had done the lift, done that exercise, big cross through it. Right, squats are done. Push-ups are done. Everything's done. That so tier A is complete. We should be now finishing on X, Y, and Z on tier E and starting to move on to the next big lift. Um, so that was one thing that helped me with kind of the flow, and then I could focus
Mm-hmm.
more on the safety, the equipment, the organization of the iPads, making sure the players are set up on those, making sure the exercise and the velocities are all ticked off and ready to go. Because that's the admin style stuff that makes a big difference. If you've done it wrong, then
Mm-hmm.
when it gets uploaded to Team Builder, um, you know, there could be an anomaly or a mistake that just because you were so focused on the flow of the lift. Like, I think one thing that I kind of started to develop was the players knew a lot already. Um,
Mm-hmm.
some of them would ask questions, but most of them knew where to look, and they wouldn't have to ask a lot of questions. So that was really useful as well. The staff have done an amazing job of building these athletes up to a good level of standard, um, to where they're lifting and they're happy to kind of just
Mm-hmm.
be instructed on where to go, and they wouldn't have to kind of ask me how many sets there are, how many reps they need to do, because it's up on the screens. They can see it. Um, so again, it allowed me to kind of be more time efficient and more efficient with my space. Like, let's move that because that's not in use anymore and it's a
Yeah.
trip hazard, or let's move that plate because it's not in use anymore and someone could trip on it. Um, so that was kind of one thing that kind of
Yeah.
helped me, was just having a tick sheet.
Tick sheet. The interesting thing about the tier system that he uses as well is every tier is like 15 minutes,
Hmm.
and that's down to 15 minutes in a quarter of
Hmm.
a football game. Every exercise should take at least 15 seconds to go through.
Hmm.
Every so there's four tiers, so that's four quarters, and he always allows an extra one for overtime. So like
Mhm.
when I saw that and I connected the dots, I asked them about it, and he was like, yeah. So we make sure that they're as well getting their conditioning in, because everything's quad sets or trisets, and they sort of
Mhm.
just go one after the other. Um,
Mhm.
so for me, that was quite an interesting thing about the tier system, and it's something that I've sort of started implementing with my athletes. It's like I try
Mhm.
and meet their conditioning requirements within their program,
Mhm.
and I just again, it's that flow thing. It's easier to flow through something when you can already rationalize it to the athlete. Oh, we're doing this because of
Mhm.
this, and they're like, sweet. And it's what you said. Like as soon as you have those systems in place, the athletes sort of they're able to take a bit more responsibility of what they do when they do it.
Mhm. And
So
I
for
think what's good about the how included you are in the program, so how much the interns are kind of like assigned to do, which is good, is if you were to just give that sheet, that tier system sheet to like a random person to go and complete in the gym, like it would get done, but if you then watched how UW do it and how the interns are they generally pick up on how the intensity that they want to flow at, um, it would be completely different. So like someone just if you took that sheet into a gym and just said right here complete the session,
mhm,
I mean they'd do the squats and then take maybe a minute and a half and then do the push-ups and then another minute and a half and then so the intensity just wouldn't be there. But if you apply, if you what the staff again had done really well is straight away we were kind of made aware of how fast paced this
mhm,
that system moves, and it has to be because you've only got 50 minutes to an hour to do the lift, to complete the lift before they've got like a run or something like that, and you
yeah,
want to get them all the way through the lift. It's just like 16 exercises, right?
mhm,
It's a lot of volume to get in. So the intensity is an important part um, of how that session flows.
100%. What was your favorite parts about being up there?
Um, I think socially um, was the location itself. I mean, Seattle's beautiful. It's surrounded by really nice places to go and visit. We were lucky enough to have your previous guest, Natalie, who's a local,
Hmm.
who was able to kind of show us some good local spots and some good hikes locally, and also have people that drove, right? Because you know
That's
you want to
important.
get out of the city a little bit, right? You want to get out, and if you're doing an international internship, at the end of the day, you're in a place which you might not ever get the chance to go to again. So you want to make the most of that, and in your time there, actually explore as much as possible. So I think socially was just the location and the other interns we gelled well, so we were able to kind
Mm,
of go and do stuff and just enjoy our time out on the lake or on a hike. Um, I think from a career perspective is to see the value of networking. As
yeah.
I'd always kind of had that sense. So I'd always try and make every interaction, something valuable. Either I'm trying to be valuable to someone or I'm trying to make someone valuable to me. So or we're trying to be valuable to each other. So there's some form of every interaction, especially, not all the time, but in like life. But
Yeah.
especially through like if I'm having like someone that's another coach or a trainer, like I go in with the intentions to kind of this could be someone that could be someone, right? So um and then one day hopefully I'd like to think that it would be the reverse, right? I could be someone that could be someone. So I want to make sure I know people so I can then, if
Hmm.
I'm ever in a position to do so, I can kind of be like, oh yeah, I know someone that's really good at that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. um.
yeah.
So what you've previously touched upon, like the PTs and how that system works. What's some of the things
Hmm.
that you watch that you're like something needs to happen here?
Oh yeah, like I think we've spoke about certain things before. Like again, some of the stuff that happens, it just shouldn't be happening. If it was in any other industry that was more watched or if more regulated, if you took like someone in like a a doctor, or if you took someone in someone in healthcare, if they make a big mistake, people know about it, right? There's an
Mm-hmm.
investigation, and there's people that are made aware so they can do the appropriate thing and assess whether that was a mistake, and whether it was something unavoidable or whether it was something that was just lack of knowledge. But there's a purpose behind that, because then it can get fixed, so that if, let's say, someone makes a mistake and then they find out where their education was from, they can then contact the educators and say, right, you need to include this in your program because someone's made a mistake and they didn't know they made a mistake, and it was a mistake and someone got hurt, right? But in a gym setting, people get hurt, or trainers put clients at risk all the time. I put clients at risk all the time, because whenever you set foot in a gym, there is a risk. Dependent on the standard of your, I want to say qualifications, but I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, the ability
You're kind
to
of,
go through it.
it's almost your ability to kind of take education, take common sense, and then build kind of like a standard, right? Because there is an element of, you have to understand that when you're training a client, there is a risk. You mitigate that risk by just being sensible and being aware of that. And it's kind of like, some people have it, some people are aware of that, and then there's some trainers that come through, and again, we could go into a massive rabbit hole here of maybe why, it could be education, it could be standards, it could be regulating governing bodies, it could be the individual themselves, it could be insurers. But again, it kind of dials down to what I believe is like the lack of ability to kind of accept that there's a risk. So you just go crazy with people whenever you're working with an individual, there has to be individual approach, because everyone's different. We know that. I've never known science to be as good as what it is now, right? Like, it's always getting better. Arguably, there's always bad research being done as well, but that has to happen in order for there to be good research, right? So, there's so much out there now that show that if you're going to work with someone, individual programs work best. You have to individualize it. And there's just so much lack of that now, right? So much lack. There's just a lack of that within the industry. So see a lot of risk, like people pushing people to limits. Like, take the athletes at UW, right? They are pushing hard all the time. But these are Division 1 young athletes. They can, they are aware of kind of like the amount that they can push. I think the older
noticed that as well. It's like they've got the nutrition side, they've got all the physical trainers, like they've got a whole program that allows them. And I think that's the key here, is like making sure you do everything, every step that allows you to push as hard. Because like, if it's like a car and petrol, if you don't put enough petrol in the car and say you travel the world, if you're only putting petrol once, you're going, that's it. Like, you've only got that one tank. But given the proper nutrition, given the proper sort of methods to train, I think that's what some people don't realize, because like, energy systems is a tricky thing to understand. So it goes back to that education phase, and that it's just
like some people that have the ability to coach people, like, don't really understand process. Like, oh, you've had a bad day, you're stressed, all right, let's go for a max effort today. Like, nah. Like, this person's a 34-year-old gen pop person that just wants to lose a bit of weight. They don't care, they don't need this level of intensity that you're kind of wanting out of them to demonstrate, because there's almost this and this is, I see this more in the commercial gyms. This is more like, if people see PTs pushing like their clients to the limit, and they're sweating and they're red, it's almost seen as a triumph. So again, another problem that I see, not only is it the individual coach's responsibility to make sure that they're aware and safe and educated, and they stay on top of their continued professional development and all that sort of stuff, which is super important. It's also needs to be made aware to actual public of what good coaching and good training actually is. And that's the where the
100%.
regulating governing bodies come in, right? That's where they come in, and they can be the mediator within the middle, kind of, right, you're a client, you're this, here's the trainers, they're all passed off, like, as far as we can see, they've done the right things and they're the right people. But the people that, I won't name companies, right? But the people that need to know about those companies don't know about those companies. They have
Yeah.
no idea who they are. And that's the purpose, is that individual people can go onto this website and go onto these companies, search trainers in the area that have, specialist areas in this and this and this. And then it spits out, trainers that have come through their program
Mm-hmm.
that are qualified within their eyes. Now, without that middle person, without that middle company mediating the process, the public are just blind to it. They just don't know what good and what bad is until it goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
unfortunately, we're in a situation now where it has to go wrong in order for there to be some good that comes out of it. Unless they get with a good coach from the very word go. Often they have to have a bad experience to kind of know it was a bad experience. Until then, there's no knowledge to the Gen Pop pool
Yeah.
of people,
Yeah. So
which again just leads to issues a lot of the time.
yeah, we've previously spoke about this, and I sometimes go on massive rants on social media
Mm-hmm.
about it. But the state of which these industries aren't being upheld and to a certain standard. Now, everyone in this industry has passed some qualification, which
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's fine. But how can you implement that into your programs? Because like there's
Mm-hmm.
coaches and there's specifically personal trainers that do their weekend course and that's all they've done, and
Mm-hmm.
then social media is their resources. Now
Mm-hmm.
that's fine to a certain extent, but then again it goes back to that common sense thing. Like, does making your client do burpees straight into split squats, straight into deadlift, does that make sense? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what is why would that person do that on a day to day, never mind in that gym environment? And I think,
Yeah, like what does it mean to that one individual, right?
yeah, which I
Like,
think is
does
this industry sort of forgot about is like we need to give them functionality for their lives.
mm-hmm.
Like, if I've got an elderly lady, I'm mostly going to be working on their shoulder strength. They'll have to put up things in shelves. I'm going to help them carry weight, shopping bags. I'll farmer's walk, dumbbells, farmer's walk.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Core stability, a big thing with aging population is their mobility and stability goals. So let's build that into the program. I'm not going to get
Mm-hmm.
them to do burpees and kick throughs all at once. That means nothing to them. So for me and you that spoke about it is like what what is the standard that the industry should be going by and what qualifications get you there. And I think that's the problem area that we're finding is there's not after you're done. Like you don't have to keep up
Mm-hmm.
with anything. You don't have like if it was like an ideal situation, what would you recommend like coaches do or
Mm-hmm.
personal trainers do?
Go and do another course. Like, you'll be surprised on, like, how different things operate. Like, if I look back on my personal training course way back when, like, it was rubbish. Like, it did not prepare me for the industry at all, right? But then I've done other personal, or I've been a part of other personal training courses that have been amazing. They've taught you how to run a business. They've taught you how to, because, like, don't forget, if you once you qualify, if you're quite, like, young and you're actually eager to be a trainer, then, and you're thrown into a commercial gym, all of a sudden you've got to run a business, understand how to take payments, understand how to do consultations and all sorts, right? So and then you kind of get lost in, you forget why, you forget about you doing courses and whatnot like that, right? You forget about it because you're too busy trying to develop yourself. But it's so important to make sure you like maintain the ability, go and do another course, go and do a business course, go and do a course in how to have conversations, and how, all these courses that you can go on to that are just going to develop you, understand kind of like professionalism,
Mm-hmm.
and also you're investing money, whereas like you're not just taking money, right? You're taking the money you get in and investing it to increase your value, and I think that speaks
Yeah.
volumes. When you like, you'd be surprised, you go into commercial gyms and you could just ask a trainer, when was the last time you did a course? Like, they probably
Yep.
won't have done a course since they qualified, right? um and again, like, it doesn't need to be like 100% relevant just because you're a trainer. It doesn't need to be a postural analysis course. It doesn't need to, because often those courses are quack anyway, right? Like, usually they're a gimmicky thing. Like, it's a nice idea, but it's usually developed from like a trend. Like,
Mm-hmm.
postural analysis is a big one. It's a big trend, and whilst it is valuable to potentially some, it often makes you quite blinded to um,
Just the
the other
basics.
side, right?
Yeah.
Keeping it basic. So, like, it doesn't have to be relevant. It can just be a people development skill. You could be
Yeah.
going to, like I say, going to a, like a tour communications course. You could be going to a business course. It's just something that's like, you've taken your passion, you've started earning from it, which is great. But now, just like any other business, invest something back, because then you're going to start to value yourself and start to
Mm-hmm.
operate like an actual business, which needs client satisfaction. You need to be able to achieving the goals of people, but you're
Yeah.
also still operating as a business. You're taking income, taking some for, obviously you want to enjoy yourself and have money to go and do things, but then, reinvest a portion of it into the business to develop and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the clients that know something about something, that's how they see that, and they'll see that you've gone right. What do my clients need? They might need a piece of equipment, or they might need more nutritional support. So I'm going to take my money that I've invested, that I've obtained through business operations, and I'm going to invest in a nutrition course, because that's going to increase value of three or
Mm-hmm.
four, five, six clients, whatever it might be, and any future clients you might get. But
It's that investing money in your future. I always think that
mhm,
if it makes sense to invest to add value to something else, it's without a doubt, it's just go for it because you add that
mhm,
value. And I think that's why I sort of connected really well with Coach Mark, is because he's always looking at the bigger picture. Like, how
mhm,
can I make this small investment at a time, which I might struggle with, but how can that serve me down the line or up here?
mhm,
And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like
uh,
looking at these opportunities to take further courses. I've done business courses. The business side of things is it's it's a different ball game to me, but I did
mhm,
it just so I can be like, if I'm running my own business, I need to know X, Y, and Z. Yes, there's
mhm,
people for it, but I like to know it for myself as well. But I've 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 got a question on some things that you've said. Is like, how do you then build that buy-in and build that relationship with your clients to make them aware that, okay, yes, he's actually in this for me.
mhm. Or just be transparent with them, like, that it's important to bring the personal into personal training, right? You are a person.
Mm,
They are investing in a business for sure, right? But they're also, they're interested in you, or they're in, they've been referred to you. So it's important to, at the start, kind of talk to them about, right, let's say we're talking about costs. Your training session costs £45, right? After a while, you can then talk to them about, well, when you invest X amount, I'm going to buy you, or I'm going to invest in, you having a heart rate monitor. And the reason why I want you to do that is because your goal is to get fitter.
Mm-hmm.
You currently don't have any way of tracking your heart rate, so it's important that you have that. Now, my job is to provide you a service and to provide you with the service that's going to obtain you your goal. So if your goal is to do a half marathon, right? We want to be tracking heart rate in some way, shape, or form. And you develop that knowledge through, again, I didn't learn that when I was in my personal training course, but I've learned that through experience and then through doing further development that, heart rate and, lots of other things can be, are used for levels of fitness. I want to be able to track that as a coach. So I'm going to take the payments that you're investing in, it goes into a pool, and I'm going to invest in a heart rate monitor for you because that's going to help you with your goal. And that then shows that you're not just taking. You're genuinely, you're not, what's the word for it? You're helping them out monetarily, right? Monetarily, because you value their target more than you do the money, right? So you've taken the money that they're investing, and as easy as it would be to just kind of take and be like, right, you need to now go and buy a heart rate monitor. Like, you don't invest in Netflix and then get charged to watch a movie.
Yeah.
Right. You're paying for a service because you're going to get the movies as part of that service. So if I'm then able to kind of like be in a position where I can take their investments and be smart when they pay me, I'm smart, I put money away. I can then, when they're ready and they've built up, and I know that they're going to be loyal, and it's almost that trust, and that kind of comes with instinct, I guess. You then make the financial investment to go, right, here's a heart rate monitor, because and we're going to start doing X, Y, and Z with it. And then they're like, oh my God, that's that's super rare that you get that. But I think that's the future of the industry, is that you're providing the service. You're not just providing training. It's about it's more than that. It can be more than that. You might invest in them to go onto a course, because education's a huge thing now, right? Clients, athletes, just as much as coaches, it's about knowing. So then if you're ever in a situation where you have to do it, the processes, well enough to do that, to do it as well. So, investing in clients to go on a course, maybe a nutrition, not necessarily a nutrition course, but maybe there might be like a fun little interactive course on cooking, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Just something that kind of brings and builds their knowledge base and shows that you're interested in their development more than you're interested in just taking their money. It's about developing them as an individual. So that's something that I think future coaches, it don't, again, at the start, it's super hard to do that, because you might need the money for bills and all sorts. But once you get to a point where you've got a good few, clients rolling through, seeing yourself as a operating business, and then all you have to do is look up, how businesses work. They get, income in, lump sum goes towards, building up a money pot to pay your taxes and all those other business outgoings that are going to crop up at some point that you need to be prepared for. But then also they take a lump sum and they put it in a little investment pot. And then once that investment pot reaches a certain amount, you're ready to help clients out, or you're ready to help everyone out by investing in a piece of equipment or investing in a course for yourself.
Yeah. I've obviously got you on social, so I'm slightly aware of what you use and what you do, but can you just give us a little rundown of things that you have invested in and that you would recommend investing in, or maybe from sort of your experience not investing in?
Yeah, so I mean, one of my, let's say my biggest investments was in a business coach who actually turned out to be the best and worst thing that I've invested in, because the one thing it's made me do is to make me be critical of investments, because it was the first big lump sum that I'd invested into some. At the time, it was a service, so it wasn't an actual tangible product. But like it was up into the thousands for this investment, and for a business coach, and they turned out to be fairly worthless to me, right? They had a script. It dials back to, again, some of the issues in this industry are occurring in other industries too, right? So there was just no individualization, there was no care, but there was a very good sales pitch that made me think that I needed it, and it turned out to be like I say, a really bad investment financially, but a really good investment for me as a person, because it allowed me to kind of be like, right, well, now I need to make sure that if I'm going to invest in things, I need to investigate, harder. I need to make sure it's something that's worthwhile. So, as a tangible product, I use like testing equipment, right? So I started to get more athletes in naturally. I started to pick up more athletes. And I needed a way of testing them. So I needed, like, say, heart rate monitors. I needed a blood lactate kit. I needed actual physical strength test equipment, like isometric strength gauges. I needed something to track velocity. So piece by piece, I started to build up my testing equipment. So then I was able to then bring an athlete in and test them as good as, like if they were in a team setting. Also invest in software on my laptop invest in a laptop, for example, right? Like, to be able to efficiently operate the data and send it out to them in a nice, efficient way. Invest in a camera to be able to take videos and take content. Even something like investing in a car, for example, right? You invest in a car, obviously you want it as an individual, but it's now, I see it as an investment, because I can now see people at their houses, and I can travel. So it opens the doors to be able to be in a wider area of just than where I am. So yeah, it's like there's a handful of good ones. There's just a handful of bad ones. Like courses, again, like early on, very naive to kind of like think, oh, this is an awesome course, and then thinking back on it now, it's just like I never used that information ever, and I'm never probably going to. Because it was
I
just
suppose
like
it's like learning what not to do.
Yeah, right. Like, you got to make mistakes. It's just like anything. You almost got to like invest in bad things sometimes to know that there's good things that come out of it. Like, and the good thing is that there's always a lesson, right? There's always something to take from it. If you invest in a bad course, again, chances are you're not going to invest in many more before you start investing in good courses, because you're going to learn like what makes a good course or what makes a bad course. You're going to start to build up your knowledge on what makes it good and what makes it bad, or what makes it not necessarily bad or good. So I've definitely been on some courses that I knew was going to be a challenge, like challenging my bias, but then at the same time, that it wasn't a bad course, it wasn't a wrong course, it was just something that was against something I'd learned elsewhere. So by doing that other course, it allowed me to kind of like be in the middle, because that's just the hard thing. Yeah, exactly. Challenge my decision making, but it also makes the individual experience in the middle, because again, it brings it back to the individual client. Like, there is no right and wrong for that client at the time. There is what's right for them, so they need to be in the middle. So the best thing you can do is build a donut around them, and they're in the middle. Like, you've done a course on this, and you've done a course on this, and you've done a course on this. So you can now start to take that individual and be like, oh, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to pull that, course on, I don't know, maybe queuing, right? Or you might have not, and loads of things. I might pull up on that course that I did on, like nutrition and protein and carbohydrates and basic nutrition understanding, because this person has no nutrition understanding, and I need to be able to simplify complex processes of physiology
Yeah.
into something simple. So I'm going to use that basic nutrition course that I did 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, whatever, so I can be a valuable coach to this individual. So I think that's an important process, is to realize that your client's in the middle, or your athlete's in the middle, and you need to be skilled all around them. And you
Mm.
they might only need one thing, but at least if they were someone else, you've got other things ready to
Yeah.
help them.
It's sort of like having buckets and you're kind of just dipping in and filling them each at a time,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what your athlete needs or your client needs.
Mm-hmm.
What's some of the things that you've taken across from like your investment at UW to what you're doing just now?
Certainly, like logistics, such as like organization. So realizing that I was probably spending, like, let's take a client session. I'd set them up on trap bar deadlifts, with a couple of other exercises in the circuit. But then rather than have the next kind of equipment ready to go, I'd probably take time. Well, not take time, but I'd deload the bar, I'd put the bar away,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd move on to the next circuit, rather than just kind of like, right, the next stuff's ready to go. You're gonna go into this. You're gonna go into this. So it's just building up the logistics to make sure time management's kind of key. So making sure that the sessions actually kind of like flow, the equipment's readily available. It's not just something that's like conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to go from like here to like somewhere else in the gym to like somewhere else in the gym. Like, all right, where's the place that's going to work? This session's going to operate best, and then I'm going to bring the equipment over, make sure that there's a nice flow to everything. So it's like the logistics.
Yeah.
Like for sure something that I've implemented in, because
Yeah.
you've done it at such a high paced environment. It kind of doesn't feel it doesn't feel as intense when you're just with one person, but you're still applying the same processes. There's just, like I said earlier, there's just a lot less external moving parts that's like
Mm-hmm.
around you. You can kind of operate nicely.
Yeah. So how does that sort of system work in a public gym setting where obviously there's different
Yeah,
like unmeasurable outcomes?
yeah. Again, like it's just about being as prepared as you can be. So, if you can obviously avoid the obvious one, which is, if you don't want a busy gym, don't go in the evenings. Don't, like, I go back to the scheduling app that I use. I don't even have sessions available in the evening. So past like 5 o'clock, I'm like, no sessions, mainly because I want the logistics to run well.
Mm.
And my service works best if I can see you at appropriate times, when I can predict where the gym's going to be and what equipment's going to be available. But so you can just avoid being, getting too lost in a chaos environment, and just pre-planning. So making sure you arrive early. You don't arrive, if your session's at
Mm.
5. Don't arrive at 5. Arrive at 4:45. Get stuff ready. So then the client walks in. You don't have to worry about getting them straight in. You might want to have a bit of a chat. We go back to,
Mm.
one thing that's like really valuable is finding out how their day was, finding out if they're feeling okay. Are you sore? Like, you're just asking these general questions, but in the background, as a coach, you're filtering that through into like adaptations and changes that you might want to make, because that person might have had a really bad sleep, or they might be really dehydrated. They might be feeling really hot, and kind of, it might be really humid that day, right? So
Mm.
like, it's worthwhile getting in 15 minutes early, because you can check the environment. Like, the gym might be like, one of the gyms I work, we had aircon issues like the other week when it was really hot. So
Right.
again, sessions had to slightly change because the environment was slightly wrong. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't go in 10 minutes early, 15 minutes early. So I was able to at least best prepare. I was able to go, right, well, it's really hot today, so I'm actually not going to go through that kind of conditioning session as planned. We're going to go through something different. So make sure it's as progressive as possible, rather than like reacting. I'm kind of being
Mm-hmm.
proactive as best as possible. So that's one real easy way of just making sure that you are. And then also that leads into like, one of the big issues is brings into like some of the trainers making mistakes is, it's almost advocated that you've got back to back bookings for like 5 hours at a time. You know, amazing that PT's busy. There is no way that that first person is receiving the same quality of service as the last person, because you've not scheduled a break to set up their session. So the chances are you're going to fall into the trap of person A, person B, person C, person D, person E, using very similar bits of kit and following a very similar session, which of course, again, isn't the worst thing in the world if the person just wants to get, a bit stronger or a little bit fitter. But like logistically, that's 5 individuals receiving one product, which devalues your service. So again, if the people knew that what was going on, they probably wouldn't feel comfortable paying premium prices for it, because you're just receiving the same process as someone else.
Yeah, it goes back to that individuality of program building. I saw this. I think it was like a reel on TikTok, and it was like a coach just like swiping paper throughs and stamping at the same time, being like, "That's what programs are." People just see as like, this program works on this. Let's apply it to everyone. But then it's that restrictions. What restrictions does your client have? What can they do? What can they not do? And then it's just a rabbit hole again.
It's like
What's
it's like
sorry?
like a client would ask. It's a common question I get is always like, how long are the sessions? And like, I think the last thing you should say is it's an hour, because that way you're kind of capping the time, right? Unless you've got a place to be, right? But if it's freely operational, just if it's just me, I'll say I've scheduled 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. So then if you're feeling like, if you're in like external, internal, like loading is, you're super fatigued, your RPE is super high, and we're 45 minutes in to this conditioning set because of, let's say it's a bit hotter that day, or like I say, you've not slept very well, then we can finish there. Like, I've scheduled that time, but I've also not scheduled a client to start at like in an hour. So then if you want to go, if we can go, if I've scheduled for the session to be a little bit longer, like we can go a little bit longer. If you want to have a chat with me afterwards about something, if you want to ask questions, I don't want people to feel like they have to like cut their, maybe a valuable conversation short because I've got a client stood there waiting. So I'll always, again, logistically make sure people have the time allocated to them that means that they can feel comfortable and less pressured to kind of ask what they want. And I have the flexibility to kind of do different duration and different session targets for that day, just because I've allocated the time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important thing. Is that's something that I've learned from my time at UW as well. Is like, I'll go in half hour before a session starts. I'll set up all the equipment, and then I'll just go through the program again, because like I want to be able to recall that program. So they're in a tricep. What's the 3 exercises in that tricep? Rattle them off, and then what's the next? What's the next? So like that way, we like what you said, we have that flow between each session. There's It's just a nice straight path. There's no, oh, let me check if this piece of equipment's available. Everything's already there and it's ready to go. So in that sense, what's some like advice that you'd give new coaches or coaches coming into this industry?
Don't, if it's personal, so I'll go off personal training. It's something I, especially in the commercial setting, I speak to a lot of new trainers because there's constant turnover of trainers. Is try and focus on learning a lot at the start rather than earning a lot at the start, because you're not going to earn a lot, because that's just not how things operate. You don't have clients just coming to you all the time, wanting personal training. It's not glamorous in that way. You have to work to get clients, and you have to be present and build a business. So, but if you focus on learning a lot in your first year as a trainer, you'll in your second year, you'll start putting the burners on and starting, your business will really start to accelerate once you start to apply the lessons you've learned. So, like, you might pick up like a couple in your first year, and that's great. it's building your character and it's building your ability to apply a service. But you're also learning, how to take payments, and you're learning systems that work, systems that don't work, um, how many sessions you can cope with in a day, without feeling burnt out, and how much, what are your days off. You're starting to build a really nice little schedule, and it's really easy at the start to kind of get, down about it because you're not earning that much. So also be prepared that you're probably not going to earn that much. So make sure you're financially able to cope with that. I was fortunate because I was only 16, 17. I was still living at home. I didn't really have much financial outgoing, so there wasn't that pressure to kind of be earning a certain amount. So I was able to kind of spend my first year like just learning the ropes. But if you're not, then just make sure you're prepared for that. And just try and think of everything as a lesson every day, every conversation, every interaction. How could I have improved that interaction? How could I have, how could I have maybe done that consultation better? How could I have sold that conversation better? That consultation better. So those are personal training ones. As an S&C coach, be prepared to feel like a bit of like a lost part at the start, because I mean it definitely felt like it in the US. That it's a lot more serious out there. S&C coach has a bit of weight to it.
Yep.
Whereas here, like, S&C coach doesn't really mean anything, right? Like, in the grand scheme of all these people that influence fitness and influence athletes, like, you've got personal trainers, being S&C coaches, and they've never done an S&C degree, right? They've never done it because S&C is not a protected title here. So you don't have to do a degree to be a S&C coach on paper. So just be prepared to feel a little bit kind of lost, but kind of trust that if you're wanting to work with athletes, just place yourself in those environments, and you'll start to feel it. You'll start to separate between, like a personal trainer and an S&C coach. There'll start to be that divide. You will start to feel not a hierarchy. I don't want to say hierarchy, because there's definitely some amazing trainers that do an amazing job with the community building, good client results, and all sorts. I know some amazing personal trainers, and I don't think myself as better or worse as them. We're just in two different pathways. We are in the same we are in the same car, but we're at different spaces within that vehicle, where we're operating with different people in slightly different ways, and there's different thought processes behind it, I think. Because with athletes, you can't just wing it. Physiology, there's rules, and when you've just got someone wanting to lose a few pounds, like, they just need to move, and they need to enjoy it, and they need to be managed. They need to manage intake, and they need to, but they just need to be committed and enjoy being physically active as a whole, indoor and outdoor, so in and out of the gym. And again, I think I know some great trainers which do a great job in that kind of balance, and they're not just coming to the gym 5 days a week, pay me, X amount, and blah blah blah. It's like, it's all about quality of life and just enjoying being physically active, and it's great. Whereas with an athlete, it's very programmed, and there's, like I say, there's rules in which you want to meet, because they have a tournament schedule, or they might have training.
Specific
they
blocks.
might have actual training specifics, like, so yeah. And that's a whole nother conversation that we can definitely get into. But as a new trainer, like as a new S&C coach, just be prepared to kind of feel like you're not valued, I guess, yet. And that's natural. Again, it's just the nature of the industry at the moment. It's just where it's at. But the one thing that blew me away over in the US is how serious, like, the S&C coach role is. Head strength and conditioning coach comes with some super like gravity to it, and it's respected.
I do think that you're right. It's sort of like, It comes from that in America, obviously, you've got the NSCA where you have
Hmm.
to have a degree to go through it. Whereas,
Hmm.
unfortunately, in the UK, you don't have to have a degree, but as well, they place a little bit more emphasis on the coaching element.
Hmm.
So, without having a degree, there is like specific physiological markers that you're required to know. You're required to learn
Hmm.
through, and you're assessed on it essentially. That to go through the UKSEA program, you don't have to have them. You can just read
Hmm.
their textbook and that's it. But you don't go into labs. You don't go into that environment where that is being tested. Whereas
Hmm.
across in the UK, that the US, that's a requirement. You have to have a degree. So
Hmm.
I think there's obviously pros and cons to every sort of qualification and um, accreditation, but I think it's trying to figure out how to best go about it, and
Hmm.
it is that thing, unfortunately, that you can have Joe from down the block that interested in fitness and now is the local club's S&C coach because he's done it,
Hmm.
but what does he actually know? And like
Hmm.
how how effective is he going to be? Now, I'm not saying that some great coaches haven't came out from that. They have in their own right, but it's usually taken more than that course to do.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely, definitely.
No, so for me, yeah, it's just trying to figure out which way is the best way to go. And like it's so simple as well. Just read. You can read a million and
Hmm.
different one books and just apply different things. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, like what would you say has been the most valuable thing that you've sort of learned going through your educational pathway?
Um, the what kind of what it takes to be well, I think what I've learned the most is have trust in your your abilities as well. Like, well, not as well, just in general. Like, have a trust in your ability um, to be a good coach, and it will kind of click. If you trust your ability, um, and again, bringing in just be a good person, have good kind of like common awareness of just safety and that you're working with people and have set some good professional standards, you
Hmm.
know set that are respectable. They don't have to be super high, um so long, because again, like the less you focus on your if you don't focus on safety at all, then your professional standards need to be super high. But if you focus on it being generally good, professional, generally good person, generally safe, all of those sorts of things, then things just start to flow nicely
Mm-hmm.
around you. And then when things flow nicely around you, and you trusted, I think it's the kind of main word, you become trusted. Then yeah, things start to click. It doesn't matter whether you're working with athletes, self-employed, employed, working with another team. Like, you want to be an energy, you want to be a good energy within that space
Mm-hmm.
for individuals and whatnot. So like, you need to just have those foundations lay and just trust those basics, and kind of things will start to just occur and flow around you nicely. Um, and then it's just a case of expanding on those as if and when opportunities arise. So once you get to a comfortable spot, look for something to expand that, expand your professional standards, or
Mm-hmm.
expand your value, or expand your safety ability, or all of those sorts of things. But just having the basics first, and then looking to branch out slowly. Take your
Yeah.
time, because I think a lot of people rush. They just do course, bang, or they don't do any courses, and they just focus purely on money, 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 money. Like, they just focus on like one thing that's super hard and super intense. They just lose that. They lose like a lot of the other things that make you make you as a coach flow well and
Yeah.
operate at a good level.
I've got one last thing to say, and that's
Perfect.
let's make like babies.
And head up.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there she is.
um,
Yeah, still creeping me
Natalie,
out with
when she said
that
that, I
phrase.
was like, that's one of the best phrases I've ever heard.
Yeah, smake like a baby and head out. So what I have one more that was really good, and this was Coach McKeith's. And I've used this since. So he said, you've got to do a bit of swag, which is a scientific wild ass guess, which I
Nice.
loved. I like that one.
I
Yeah.
like that.
So yeah, swag it.
I like it. No,
Yeah, which is
thank you so much for
often what we're
coming.
doing half the time, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Scientific wild
Especially when
ass
you're getting
guesses all over.
like one of the last things that Coach Mark said to us, Coach AJ actually, he was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well done! Like you got pulled in a million different one directions, and you just kept up."
Yeah, that's it. Keep
No,
plugging away. Like even
yeah,
like Coach Cook as well. Like because he was our intern supervisor, he said something very similar. Like this was a hard time that we were out there. So and at the time, there's times where you feel like I really messed that up. Like I've not done a good. Like I've just not done that as good as what I could have done. But something is always going to be better than nothing. If it might not be done right, or it might not be done 100% like perfect, but if it's just 10%, then it's made someone's life 90% easier, right? So just
100%.
keep doing those little things, keep applying yourself in the things that you feel confident with, and like there was certain tasks like I'm not the best at like assigning tasks to people. I'm not a great it's just not something I've been exposed to, because again I've been self-employed. I've not been in like an employed scenario where I've had people that I have to like, oh, you could go do this and you could go do that and you could go do this as from an intern perspective. So like accepting that, and then just kind of like, all right, well, if someone asks me to do something, I'm just going to go do it, like, or I'm going to try and do it before they ask, so then it's ready to go. So again, I'm just trying to make
100%.
things slightly easier.
100%. Thank you so much for coming on. Um,
No pleasure, man.
Obviously, we've spoke many times before, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always that thing that you're saying. It's informative every time that we speak. Something that comes out of it, and I think that's why I like this podcast. Is every episode you're sort of challenged to speak and challenged in your ways of thinking, and just it's nice to have coaches coming on and speaking about their pathway and progression. So give a
That's
shout
awesome.
out to your business and your
Yeah.
social medias.
So I'm currently rebranding a little bit, but the Kinetic Coach, that's me on Instagram. Other than that, it's my name. So I do have a Instagram and Facebook for the business, but LinkedIn, it's just my name, Jack Woolhouse. Yeah, connecting with everybody. And yeah, following on Instagram, because it's not something I've been massively successful with, but at the same time, I haven't really put much effort in. I haven't put that much effort in. And I'm currently going through a bit of a rebrand, ready to kind of make things a little bit more automated. So and Instagram's one of those things. So yeah, invested in a nice camera to take some videos and pictures, so at least the content looks good. at least the content looks good. That's all it needs to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jack.
No problem. Good.
Peace.